Hi, welcome everyone to our live stream today. This is actually going to be the last time that we're doing it on a Wednesday. So starting next week, if you want to join Hill and Ponton, they will be happening on Tuesdays at 2 o'clock. But Carrie, are you ready? You ready to get into it?
I am ready. Hello,
All right.
everyone.
Hi. We're ready. Let's get into it. All right. I will go first. Okay. Leander Savoy. Hello. Thanks for what you do. You're welcome. I'm getting ready to file a higher level review for denials with a good nexus letter. What form do you fill out to waive the time and just review it? Any advice? So my first advice would be that if you are submitting a nexus letter, that you certainly don't want to go higher level review because they can't review any additional evidence. So you would want to go into the supplemental claim lane, or you could go into the board with the additional evidence. If you decide to take it, there's nothing you can do as far as waiving time if you go supplemental. But if you go to the board into the evidence lane, you can fill out a waiver. It's essentially a form that VA will send to you when they docket it. I call it a Williams waiver that says that you're waiving your right to switch to a different appeal lane and for them to go ahead and make a decision on the claim. So those would be the things that I do, but you don't want to file a higher level review if you have no evidence. Gary?
I agree 100%. Nothing else to add to that one. All right. Darwin Nolan, part 1. Rated 100%, TDIU, SC 70% for PTSD, 10% for tinnitus, 0% for hearing loss. I'll file for ANA, erectile dysfunction, obstructive sleep apnea, and chronic fatigue syndrome. I submitted the claims before ITF August 1st. In 30 days, I'll have 2680. I didn't file for PTSD increase, but VA has scheduled an exam for PTSD increase on 8th of August. I'm 55, PTSD and TDIU date 16 November. What should be my strategy? All right, so the reason you're getting an exam for PTSD is because you filed. Wait, go back there. I'm sorry. Wait a minute. Go back one question. All right. So I'm guessing here a little bit. You're already TDIU. If you file for TDIU, then they would give you an exam for PTSD. It's probably the same thing happening here because you file for ANA. So you are basically telling VA that your disabilities have worsened to the point where you need the aid and attendance of another individual for the daily needs of living, despite the fact that you've got new issues on there. So that means they can evaluate everything that may contribute to the ANA, with your PTSD being the worst of your conditions. They're going to likely evaluate that to see if that's severe enough to support an ANA claim. So there's no real strategy there. When you file for an increase at 100%, which there's only a few ways to do that, you did one of them. You open the door to get the PTSD re-examined. That's why I tell everybody, if you're 100%, be real careful about filing new claims.
Yeah, the only, even if you hadn't filed for the aid and attendance, and let's say you had just filed for the sleep apnea or chronic fatigue or the erectile dysfunction, if you at any point said that you think they're due to your PTSD, you're also opening yourself up for them to reopen that PTSD rating. So there's a lot of reasons why that may have happened. As far as your strategy, go in there and be honest about your PTSD symptoms. Obviously, they're pretty severe. You've been given a 70% rating, and your TDIU probably mostly on the PTSD. So just go in there, be honest, and have them do the evaluation and then see what happens. I don't really think there's anything else to do. Show up for the exam. Definitely do that. All right. Todd Lemiksu had radical prostatectomy in February where prostate removed at 100% now. VA reducing me to 60%, even with me using 15 depends per day. How do I appeal this rating? I have 10% for each knee and 10% for tinnitus or tinnitus. So after your treatment, or you no longer have the prostate cancer because of the prostatectomy, VA is going to rate you on your residuals. I just asked Carrie about this not too long ago, and he said for a 60% rating, based on the urinary dysfunction, that means that you would require a catheter as far as the urinary frequency and all that stuff. A 40% rating is indicative of needing to change depends so many times per day. If you're at 60% total and it's 40 for the urinary dysfunction and 10 for each knee, and it sounds like that is actually accurate unless you need the higher rating of 60% for the urinary dysfunction. I don't really, that would be my take on that. But if you can't get work because your urinary dysfunction or your prostate cancer is not allowing you to do that, well, you're not at 60 for one condition, so you don't qualify for that either. Never mind.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure if that's saying he's being reduced to 60 just for the prostate cancer, or if he's going to be a total of 60 with the 10% for each knee. But yeah, I mean, you could still file for TDIU. It's going to be a little harder to get if you're at 40 for the prostate cancer. If it's at 60, and I'm not 100% certain based on what you said there, if your cancer is not active and you're getting rated on residuals, 60% is the maximum rating, unless you've had a suprapubic prostatectomy, I think I'm saying, or suprapubic cystotomy. And that's where which with prostate cancer, you likely have not. That's where a hole will be put in your bladder, if you have a bladder, and you have a urostomy bag. That's about the only way to get. Usually, that's for bladder cancer, not prostate cancer. Some people get bladder and prostate cancer together, and then you could end up with that. But yeah, typically, once the 100% is gone, cancer is no longer active. If it's 60 just for the prostate cancer residuals, that's about the maximum rating you can get. All right, Sonia Bullman Blackledge was denied for anxiety, but letter states even though symptoms similar to diagnosis are in military records, no formal diagnosis was made in service. Also states they do hit C records. Also states they do hit C record of counseling received during service. Got out in 96 and have had continual counseling since service and been on medication since mid-2000s. Any suggestions? Yeah, I would appeal that. Doesn't matter if there's no diagnosis in service. If your symptoms began in service and led to the current diagnosis, I would want to know, one, did they get an examination? Or is it just VA, a rater saying, yeah, we saw that you had symptoms in service, but there's no formal diagnosis and one's not related to the other. If that's the case, I would go with it. Personally, I would go with a higher level review and let them know that they did not examine you. If they did examine you, I'd want to see the results of that examination, because it sounds like there's a problem with that medical opinion. We see those all the time. And it, depending on what it said would gauge what I would do. There's a million ways to Sunday as to how that opinion could be inadequate. And depending on how it's inadequate, I might go HLR with it. Otherwise, I might go to the Board of Veterans Appeals with it. It just depends. But I would most certainly appeal that.
I agree.
Anything else, Ursula?
Nope, I agree. All right, David Santiago, thank you, H&P, for forwarding my case to a colleague law firm. Received 100% permanent and total. Still have TDIU pending. Excellent. I'm assuming the TDIU might be for an earlier effective date, maybe. I don't know. Double checking effective date. Thank you for assisting veterans. Hoorah. Well, congratulations. I'm glad that you're getting there, and I'm glad that we were able to refer you out. So do you want a hoorah, Carrie? I think that's you, isn't it?
Hoorah.
He's the Marine. All right.
All right, Alan, if a rating changes, will the VA automatically give you the higher rating without you filing for it? I'm assuming if you mean the rating criteria in the rating schedule changes, and the answer is definitely not. They do not pull your ratings when changes come about. You have to file for an increase be cautious, if the new criteria supports an increase. And then they will rate on the new criteria. But no, they don't do that automatically.
Tiny. 1 of 3. I hope it's 3, not 31. Okay, yeah, okay. I hope my message gets to you today. This is my 3rd try. You got us, Tiny. I would like to know if there's any limit to disability claims for vets who didn't complete basic training. I also want to know your take on depression marker in my military record. I've been diagnosed with PTSD due to MST. No other information in my military file. I also have a nexus letter by my VA psych. Should this be enough? I have a back claim with lumbar sprain in my military record. Is this enough? I have developed scoliosis, bulging discs throughout my spine since discharge in 78. I began treatment post-discharge. All right, we're going to take this piece by piece. Let's start with number 1. So as far as knowing if there's a limit to disability claims, so normally in order to be considered a veteran, you have to serve for so many days. But if you are hurt in the military and then sent out of basic training, that counts. Carrie's probably better at knowing off the top of his head what all those dates and days required are. So I'm going to let him answer the rest of this question, and then I'll do the second part.
All right. So is there any limit to a disability claim for vets who did not complete basic training? The answer is no. Now, the fact that you didn't complete basic training obviously is going to limit your service, is going to limit your chances to get hurt in service because it's much shorter. But as soon as you step foot on the yellow footprints, I'm a Marine, so I don't know if everybody has yellow footprints. Marines do. In fact, as soon as you board the airplane and are under government control, even though you might not even be at boot camp yet, you are considered on duty. If you get hurt in that time period, then that can be considered active duty for VA purposes, even though you might not have attained veteran status through the military per se. VA will consider that veteran status because you got hurt while performing active duty. Boot camp is considered active duty. So that takes care of that. So there's no limit as far as what claims you can file. It's just what claims you can prove. All right, go to the next part because I don't remember.
I can handle this one.
Go ahead.
All right. So when you talk about depression markers in military service, when you have a PTSD due to MST diagnosis, and I've seen that diagnosis with no other information in the military file, and you have a nexus letter. So the things that you want to make sure that you are highlighting in there is, I'm not sure what your depression marker is. If when you went into the military, you said, I don't have depression, I don't have anything, but when you got out or on your separation exam, you marked depression and anxiety, that's something where you would say, I was fine going in, I came out, and, you know, this depression that I have now manifested from that. When we're dealing with things like MST, a lot of times there is nothing in the military record. And it has to do with people not reporting, being afraid of reporting, but you might see other kinds of what we call markers in the service that can be used to show that something happened. These are going to be things like going to sick call and requesting, STD testing. It can be a decline in your military performance. Like maybe you were doing really well, this MST happened, then all of a sudden you start not doing so well. You start getting in trouble. There's drug use, asking to be moved from, one place to somewhere else. And so you look at kind of more the circumstantial evidence, I guess, that would be in there when there is no actual, this event happened. You will still need VA to concede that an MST occurred. And they're going to do that through looking at your service records for markers. Or you need to make sure that you have enough evidence of lay statements about, your service, what happened to you. If you've got any kind of, paper trail to go with it, that's always helpful. But they're going to have to concede that that MST happened. Just because there's a big difference between VA conceding that an MST occurred versus your clinician saying, I'm going to give you PTSD and I think it's because of this. They're still going to want to confirm that that MST happened, and they're going to look and say it happened or it didn't happen. So even with a nexus letter, you still have to get that one part of that event in service, conceded. So you have a lot, but you still may need to point out some other things.
I would suggest, however, though, if your clinician gave you PTSD, to seek another one.
Yeah. No, why? No, that's fine.
I'm messing with Ursula there. She said if your clinician gave you PTSD.
Oh, yeah. Gave you the diagnosis of PTSD due to MST. It would be very bad if your clinician gave you PTSD due to an MST. You're right.
Sorry, saw my opportunity for a fun.
He takes those opportunities when he gets them. It's fine. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, I don't think so. I mean, you've got the nexus layer and everything, that's good. But, as far as, like you said, was it enough? It might be enough. That's impossible to say without seeing the whole record. And, but it sounds like you're off to a good start.
And I feel like you should take this next question too, because it's like its own whole question.
Okay. Is this the new one, huh? Tiny, 3 of 3. Is this 3 of 3 or 1 of 3?
This is 3 of 3. We just did the other two.
Okay. All right. Sorry. I got ahead of myself. So I have a back claim with lumbar sprain, military records. Now, there's something, maybe just how you're saying that. I have a back claim, with lumbar sprain in my military records.
I think
Maybe
he's saying there's a lumbar sprain in his military records, and
now you have a back claim.
now he has a claim.
Okay.
Or she.
It might be enough. I mean, it's enough to make a claim. Okay, let's be clear on that. The scoliosis, they're usually going to look at that as probably congenital. But the disc problems, that's a different story. Here's the thing: you've got an incident in service, you've got a current diagnosis. Are you missing a nexus? All right, you've got enough there to file a claim. Even if you didn't have the current diagnosis, you can still file a claim. But you certainly have enough there to invoke VA's duty to assist you in developing that claim, which means they are supposed to get an examination and a medical opinion. So the question is, let's just say you don't have a nexus letter for the back. VA has a duty to assist you in getting one. Now, you were in service in 78. This is obviously a long time after 78. What you run the risk of, just simply because we see it all the time, is an examiner going, yeah, he had a back strain back here many years ago. There's no treatment, no continuity of, whatever they want to call it. It should be continuity of symptoms, not treatment. Up until 20 years later, 30 years later. So the current diagnosis of degenerative disc disease is not related to that earlier back sprain. If that happens, not saying it will, that's when they'll deny the case. If, on the other hand, the examiner says, yes, he clearly had a back sprain in service, and that back sprain led to the current degenerative disc disease, then they should grant the benefit at that point. Is it enough to get the claim granted? Well, not without the nexus. You're still going to need the nexus, but I would force VA to help you get that nexus. That's what they're there to do. If you have a nexus, then great. But yeah, I would file that claim.
Agree. We already did this one.
Huh?
We already answered this question.
Oh, okay. All right. I think it's my turn, right? The veteran's aid. Sorry if I've asked this before, but if a veteran is approved for regular aid and attendance benefits, should that make it easier for their caregiver to receive caregiver benefits? I would absolutely say yes. Now, I'm going to turn this over to my caregiver expert, who is Ursula.
That's me?
Yeah,
all right. So theoretically, yes. It is actually more difficult. The requirements for aid and attendance are actually much harder to get, supposedly, than the caregiver benefit. It is not how we're seeing this play out as the claims are getting done. So while the caregiver and the veteran can file that joint application, they'll go through all of their stuff. There's a chance that they still get denied. And part of that is because the caregiver program only reviews the VHA medical records. So they don't have access to BVMS. They don't have these CMPs, all that stuff. They don't see all of those things. So my suggestion would be to have them apply. If it's denied, go ahead and go into the evidence lane at the board and submit things from the VBA side of things, like their benefit side, that are favorable and indicative that this veteran needs caregiver benefits. You will probably see a remand, but you're going to have to kind of consolidate the VHA side with the VBA side and get that in front of a board judge and have them take it down. That's what I think. I wouldn't say it's easier. It should be easier, but I've seen, veterans with R1 on the benefit side. So meaning they are at one of the highest levels of aid and attendance benefits, and they're being denied for the caregiver benefits, which makes absolutely no sense. So that's my answer.
Can I go off on a tangent for a minute?
Yeah.
Okay. So first, I'd like to say Ursula told me I'm not allowed to be an expert at everything, and that caregiver stuff is hers. I said, that is a great idea. Take it. And Ursula is my caregiver expert. So if you guys ever talk to me or our team, I'm going to say most of the time, talk to Ursula. She's the expert of caregiver, and she's learning a whole lot about it. And I have come to rely on her tremendously for everything caregiver stuff. But we both have a little bone to pick with VA when it comes to caregiver stuff. I'm just telling you this for your own information. There's a lot we don't know because we don't see when it comes to caregiver stuff. This stuff is done by VHA. You have to file usually at the VA Medical Center, from what I understand. They don't use VBMS, which is where your claims file is located in VBA, meaning the Veterans Benefits Administration. We have access to that. Okay, we can see your claims file. We can download it. When we submit something, we see it added to the claims file. None of that occurs with the caregiver program. They're using their own documents internally in VHA that they do not submit into the claims file. When benefits are awarded, we may or may not know. They might send us a letter. They might not, even though we're the rep. We don't know what the effective date of those benefits are. So if it's on appeal and it should be going back away, we don't have a way to see that. So we're going to ask you. All right. But obviously, we have an interest in this as well. But we also want to make sure that the back pay, the effective date goes to the right date. We can't see any of that right now. And so there's a lot of challenges for us on the caregiver stuff that we right now have to rely on our clients to be upfront, honest with us about. But also because some might wonder, well, why are you asking all this stuff? Because we can't see it. And there's a whole lot that VA still needs to do, in my opinion, to allow us to represent our clients to the best of our ability, which right now is a little bit difficult. The Board of Veterans Appeals is experiencing the same thing, where they will get frustrated in that a lot of records that are used to make these caregiver decisions are not in the claims file. Well, they don't access the medical record in VHA; they access it in the claims file. So, just so you know, putting that out there for your own information, and if we're ever working on any of your caregiver stuff, we might be asking you additional questions to get all the info. Ursula, you can add to that if you want, but just.
Yeah, it is kind of frustrating. The only way we can see what's going on and what the VA is looking at is through that letter that you get, which is really badly written, and by looking in your VHA records. I have tried to submit evidence through a supplemental claim, and those have never gone anywhere, and they're still sitting in the supplemental claim lane. I have found that the board is moving much faster. So good luck with that. If you find out anything, you let me know. The Veterans Aid, let's work together and figure out this caregiver program. That's it. Nathan Jahar, currently at 92% rating, all static. So you're at 90%. Putting in a neck back increase with bilateral radiculopathy, had both ratings for 8 to 10 years. This should get me to 100%. Do I need to ask for permanent and total? Thanks. So I'm for a moment going to caution you, because if you're saying you're at 92%, I don't know where you got that from, because they're either going to give you 90 or 95%. So I am assuming that you're adding up all of your percentages and trying to come up with that. Which I don't know is right, but you would need, if you're 90%, you would need a single disability at 50% to get you to 100. So if you're just getting a 20, a 10, and a 10 increase, you're not going to get to 100. I don't think. That would be my first thing. Carrie, I can see you chomping at the bit. Get in there.
If he's using the combined rating table, the way VA uses it, the way it's supposed to be used, his total combined rating can be 92%. Obviously, that's going to get him compensated at the 90% rating. You need to reach that magic 95 to round up to 100. So if you're at 92 combined by using the combined rating table, which you can be 91, 92, 93, 94, 96, whatever. But none of that shows on a VA code sheet. It just shows 90%. So, you would need three, going off memory here, 10%. If you're at 92, to get to 95 in that scenario, if one of the, now you said this radiculopathy was on your rating for 8 to 10 years. So it sounds like you already got the radiculopathy. So it's already factored into that 92%. So I don't know how, depending on how much they increase it, if they increase it, could get you to that 95. Not sure, obviously. But as far as asking for PNT, you can. Odds are if they increase it to 100% and you're already static, odds are they're going to make you PNT. You're not going to have to ask for it. I wouldn't personally ask for it because you're just seeking. I wouldn't put too much out there for somebody to scrutinize, and depending on who gets the case and they want to turn the screw a little bit, don't front load anything on it that they might not like. Just ask for the increase. That's what I would do. Does that make sense what I said, Ursula, about the?
It does, and I've seen that on our calculator. But even then, I mean, even if you're at 92 to get to 95, I mean, if you go, 10%, that's only 2.4 points up. When you do the VA math, and so I don't know that that's even going to get you. Like you're going to have to get a pretty.
10% probably wouldn't, but I think 3 would. Right. Usually at that rate, you go up 1 point per 10% when you're at the 90% rate. If you're at a 90 even, every 10% gets you up a point, at least to 95. Now, at some point, a 10% is not going to get you up a rate, but it don't matter if you're at 95.
I think it's more difficult than you think to get there. I think you're going to need about 30% or one rating of 30%. So see if that's even going to help, because what you don't want to do is go in. If you're already at a 40% for your back, I certainly would not go in and try to get an increase on that. So just take a look at it and be careful.
That's a very good point. Depending on what your back and neck is rated, if it's 40, I'd leave it alone. The bilateral radiculopathy, if you're at 10 for each, that could go up to 20. You're going to get a bilateral factor there, so that's going to help you a little bit. But with the back and neck, I'm assuming they're one, maybe they're both. If it's at 40 and you didn't save, that's not going to go to 60. I know there's a 60 criteria in the rating schedule. It's the criteria is antiquated and out of date. It's almost impossible to get a 60 because doctors don't prescribe bed rest for the length of time that the criteria calls for. It'd be malpractice. It was out of date the day they wrote that part of the rating decision.
All right, next one. Is this me or you?
I think it's me. Yeah.
We already did this one.
Mm, oh yeah, we did, didn't we? Ejo, one of
Who's
five.
working back there? Nate? What are you doing back there, buddy? Just kidding.
Ejo, 105. Need clarification to question asked last week. VA PCP doing DBQs and Nexus for me. VA only allows 30-minute appointments. So VA PCP and I agreed to do two 30-minute appointments, September 9th, September 10th, to fill out the knee and lower leg DBQ. What should be written as of the date of the exam? I think either one would be fine on that. It really, you know, if you're going to finish it on the 10th, I'd probably do it on the 10th, but it wouldn't matter. Want to make sure VA rater has no reason to see there are any errors and cannot be used. Yeah, they're not going to see anything other than the date they put on there. VA PCP just prescribed me knee braces, have instability, hearing that could be a 20% rating. Thoughts? If I have painful motion, reflection, and extension, is that two separate 10% per knee? I know raters try to combine. Okay, first, you don't get 10% for each direction. You get 10% for one direction. We've argued that till we're blue in the face. I think if you can get a rating for each flexion and extension, you should be able to get a compensable rating for each. But apparently that's not how their rules work. So you will usually get 10% for one and a 0% for the other, unless the combined makes one of them 20% or something. All right, of the two, and a lot of vets don't know, should be rated. Yeah, they should be rated separately. Also have osteoarthritis from X-rays while still active duty paratrooper. Current X-rays, separate rating for that or not. Going to pre-fill out DBQ and bring to visits so can answer questions quickly and thoroughly. So thank you much for your help. Vets, don't rage quit like I did 20 years ago. Yes, don't get mad, quit. Knees are a funky thing. Okay, you can get separate ratings for a lot of things, and you can't for everything. If you for example, you can usually get separate ratings if you have arthritis with pain. You can get that, but that usually sometimes gets thrown into the limitation of extension and limitation of flexion. If arthritis is there, that can affect those ratings. If instability is there through a cartilage damage or through I'm drawing a blank here, an ACL tear or something like that, there can be a separate rating for that. So it gets kind of complicated with knees. Personally, I think they have it way too complicated. It's hard for people like us to figure out how they have some of them rating sometimes. The maximum usually you're going to get is like a 40%, only because that's the amputation rate. If you got amputated below the knee, you're going to get 40%. You can't go above what you would get if that leg was amputated. But at the same time, if it was amputated just above the knee, that's a 60% rating. So if things affect you at certain levels, there are times you can go above that 40%, like a knee replacement sometimes. I know that's not answering all your questions exactly, but knees are a funky thing. But yes, you can get multiple ratings for multiple things. The main thing is get yourself educated on that as much as possible. If you do have real bad knee problems, it's best to get rated for everything. If you got both knees going on, you're going to get bilateral factors for that. It's going to pump up your rating, so it's all the more important to get the highest rating you can for your knee. Anything to add there, Ursula?
Nope, not at all. JDH 18702, got 6 here. All right, recently got a DTA error from higher level review for hearing loss and tinnitus. I worked on planes on the flight line for 3.5 years. I told Dro about 29 CFR defining significant threshold shifts, TSTs. VA doesn't define STS. I did that wrong the other time. My induction versus discharge test show STS. Although CMP doc says no STS as reason for initial denial, Dro ordered a new CMP exam. A VSA told me just to wait for the CMP. Without 29 CFR site, nothing would be different. Should I file a supplemental claim with the 29 site and also my daily exposure to jet fuel? Can you go back? I wasn't done reading that. Go back. I have an intent to file on file from March 2025. The hearing tinnitus supplemental would use the intent to file. Should I use the intent to file first for my claims for Meniere's disease, anxiety disorder, hypertension, heart, and others secondary to tinnitus? Even though I don't have service connection for tinnitus yet, then file a supplemental and other ITF. I heard Carol talk about filing everything that you need is service connected or secondary. All right, so is it possible to get a copy of the higher level return for my VSO? Thank you for all your help. Okay, so if you are currently waiting for a decision on the hearing loss and the tinnitus, because there was a higher level return, you can wait for the decision to find out what they do. I am not at all well versed in the site that you're talking about the hearing loss. I know that VA's hearing loss is, you have to have hearing loss for purposes, and they go by the thresholds and speech recognition and things like that. And it's a whole table. So I would wait for that decision and then decide what you want to do from there. If you currently have a supplemental claim, an intent to file that is holding a spot for other claims that you want to file, I would probably, if you get a decision and you want to go supplemental with that decision for the hearing loss, I would hold on to it and file all of those together on a 526 and an 0995, get them submitted the same date so that neither one eats up your intent to file date. That's what I suggest. If you end up going to the board with your hearing loss, then you don't need to worry about the hearing loss eating up your intent to file. You did mention, go back, I think, to question like number 2 in the list, like 6 of 2. No, go to the next one. Should I file a supplemental with your daily exposure to jet fuel? So and then you talked about like the jet fuel and all of these other conditions. So jet fuel not that I know of, can cause hearing loss and tinnitus. Being on the flight line can, and all of that. You can just assert that. VA is going to do a TARA memorandum and see what you may or may not have been exposed to. And then you would have to work on getting service connection for all of those additional conditions. Can you go the other way again to number 4? The anxiety, you've got to have a reason for the anxiety, the hypertension, the heart, and others secondary to tinnitus. I would file them all. You don't necessarily file for them and say probably secondary, but it might be from something else too. The Meniere's you're going to have a harder time with because, hearing loss and headaches is part of Meniere's disease. So, there's a lot of information here that you're trying to give me and a lot of strategy that I may have confused parts of it. But I think, in short, wait for the decision. If you want to file supplemental with all this other stuff on the same day. Carrie, did I miss something?
I don't think so, but I'll throw in my 2 cents from what I could. You're right; it's a lot of stuff, so we may not get this right. But if I understand, you want to file an ITF or a supplemental while you're currently in a DTA era pattern, so to speak. In other words, HLR found DTA error; they're returning it for an exam. Don't file a claim on that. All right, you're in the
Wait.
middle of development. If you file a supplemental claim, they're supposed to develop it. Well, the DRO has already told them to develop it. They're developing it. They're correcting an exam or medical opinion. Let them correct it. I would absolutely not do that. Let the HLR play out. While you're in that duty to assist error return phase, you can submit anything you want. Okay, you're not at the HLR anymore where you're prohibited from submitting something. You now return to the supplemental claim lane. You can submit whatever you want. Another reason not to file a supplemental claim, you're in the supplemental claim lane. Give them whatever you want. Give them whatever explanation you want. Give them the 29 CFR site, although that's a legal issue. That's not evidence per se. Okay, I don't think you're limited to the supplemental claim lane. I think you could raise that in a legal argument, even to an HLR. Legal arguments are not evidence. VA's tried to pull that before; they didn't get away with it. I agree with Ursula on these other conditions. I'd go ahead and put them. Why waste your effective date? I don't know about hypertension and heart secondary to tinnitus. I suppose that's possible. I think you're going to have a hard time with that claim, like a real hard time with it.
He says and others secondary, so I think the hypertension and the heart are separate. Those are probably
maybe I'm reading into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my take. That's really all I got to add, I think.
All right, we're going to do one more. I have to leave. I have a conference right after this, so we're going to do one more question. Carrie, that's for you. You got it.
Okie dokie. Antioch Aldo. I just filed for my increase for PTSD. I'm at 70% going 400. Be careful there. The evidence I submitted was a private DBQ and personal statement. My VSO mentioned that without a hospitalization, it probably will get denied. Okay, that's not true. Sorry, VSOs. That's the second time I've heard this from the American medical experts out in Virginia. Can it get settled in HLR or appeals if denied, or will I need more? Your opinion, please. Okay, first, you do not have to be hospitalized to get 100%. Okay, if you are hospitalized for 21 days or more than 21 days, you will get a temporary 100% for that month. But you don't have to have a hospitalization. You have to have a DBQ that supports a 100% rating. Now, you do your own DBQ, stand by for VA to get one of their own nonetheless. That's probably what they'll do. They may not, but probably will. If their DBQ comes back with total occupational and social function marked on it, which is the rating criteria for 100%, odds are they're going to grant you 100%. At least that's what they should. If they don't, absolutely go to an HLR. If they mark deficiencies in most areas, then you're probably going to keep the 70%. But yes, you can appeal that to an HLR if denied. But yeah, some of the information that's floating around out there couldn't be further from the truth. Anything to add to that?
I do. So not just like where they mark the total and occupation impairment, it also should be based on the symptoms within your record. So if you have things like suicide ideation, You're unable to take care of yourself. You're getting lost when you go places. Your grooming isn't intact. You're having, auditory and visual hallucinations, that type of thing. Those are also can be indicative of 100%, even if they say deficiencies in most areas. One single DBQ from a private medical person that says total occupational impairment, it's going to get VA to go ahead and get an exam. They will, and be prepared to fight for it. One of the other things is if you're not working, you could look at getting TDIU based on that 70%. But it is difficult to get 100% for mental health. I mean, it means that it is completely, wrecked your life, and you're struggling at most things because of it.
And can I add to that real quick? And you can continue on, Ursula, but if you are working, Ursula brought up a really good point there. Remember, the criteria for 100% is total occupational and social limitation. I'm not quoting it, but it's total occupational impairment. So if you're employed, you are not totally occupationally impaired. Something to keep in mind. I see a lot of people try to get 100%. They're out there holding down a regular job. Now, that's the only criteria that calls for that, the mental health criteria. If you lost both legs, then yeah, you're going to be at 100% plus some and can still go to work. But when it comes to mental health, something to keep in mind there. So I would agree with Ursula 100%. If you're not working, definitely go for TDIU because you don't need 100% to get that. But go ahead, Ursula.
Yeah, I can usually tell within a few minutes of talking to one of my clients if I think that getting 100% scheduler for the mental health is even possible. Typically, if you can hold a conversation, you're mostly okay. It's difficult. And I don't want, people thinking it's easy to get 100% for your mental health. It's also just like, if you've got a veteran going for SMCT, yet they can do very high thinking, complex things, they're probably not meeting that criteria. So just keep that in mind. It is hard to get 100% for your mental health.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I think we're done here. I have to get prepared for a call. Remember, next week, if you want to join us for the YouTube Live, you're going to join someone from the firm on Tuesday at 2:00. We're no longer holding these at 3. On Wednesdays. So change your calendars, and you guys will see someone next week.